Janitorial Manager presents the Business of Cleaning podcast, the podcast that brings you the information you need to be successful in the cleaning industry. The Business of Cleaning podcast provides in-depth interviews with successful personalities from the commercial cleaning industry, as well as discussing the trending topics that matter to you and your organization.
Welcome into the Business of Cleaning podcast, your number one source for information on the commercial cleaning industry. We release new episodes monthly, live from the Janitorial Manager Studios located in Toledo, Ohio. I'm Tim Clagg, the Marketing Communications Specialist here at AA Solutions and your host of the Business of Cleaning podcast. This month, we are welcoming in seven-figure cleaning owner, Josh Melton, owner of Athens Cleaning Company. And we are glad to link up with you and get you on the show, my friend.
Tim, thanks so much for having me, man. I listened to the podcast. I love it. I told you earlier, I'm like, oh my gosh, listen to this podcast host voice. He's the pro. So thanks for having me on, Tim.
You know, I got to start the show because we are now in the heart of college football, and you, being from Athens, Georgia, living in the great state of Georgia, have a talented team to cheer for, back-to-back titles in 21 and 22. Are you a Bulldog fan through and through, or do you cheer, or is your heart somewhere else on Saturdays?
So born and raised in Georgia, I'm from Middle Georgia area. And the way it works in Georgia, Tim, is like everybody that's Southern is a Georgia Bulldog fan. There's these other Yankees, what we call them, like Georgia Tech. But no, I've always been a huge Dogs fan. In fact, last time they'd won it until recently was my birth year, the Herschel years, 1980.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So yeah, it was super exciting for all of us here in all of Georgia, but definitely in the Athens area to celebrate those back-to-back national championships. I think they're going to go do it again this year, Tim. I'm really confident. Kirby and the boys.
Got a talented squad. See, my Saturdays are stress-free. You know, being from Ohio, people think, well, you're either Ohio State or Michigan. I'm neither. So I just cheer for my alma mater, Bowling Green State University, who were victorious in their opener 27-6 last night over Lafayette. But let's talk about you.
Yes,
your
sir.
development, your dedication, and teamwork really started at a young age. Your father was a pastor. What were some of the core values and lessons that you kind of absorbed at a younger age?
Man, I think with my dad being a pastor, right? So it was a small country church. Overwhelming majority of them are. So one of the things I think, Tim, I'd say is that was beneficial for me at that early age was getting to see my dad from the time I was born. I only knew my dad as a leader and as somebody who had a servant heart for others. So I can remember maybe being probably 3 or 4 years old and go into this old lady's house that was, near death's door. Mm-hmm. And we were just there to pray for her. My dad, and that was most of his ministry was, again, small church, not famous, nothing like that. But one of my core childhood memories was that moment where my dad's going to be with the daughter, who's seen her mom get close to passing away, and also being able to pray for that lady. So I saw my dad as a leader. I saw my dad as a communicator. My parents were entrepreneurs as well. So the money my dad made for being the pastor was nowhere close to being enough to survive. And so they also owned their own business. And so my childhood was church all the time, of course. And then, being in my mom and dad's office, they had a bookkeeping and accounting firm, just the two of them. Every now and then they'd have an employee. My uncle worked with us sometimes. So it was really like my childhood was church, seeing dad preach, seeing dad lead, seeing dad serve, or office, and seeing my parents do their thing. And so, it's probably, I didn't get it at the time, but the seed of leadership and entrepreneurship was definitely built in me then. It would come out later in life, but definitely those early years, seeing my dad in those roles played a role in it for sure.
And especially, there's always extra sets of eyes that are always on the pastor's children or the pastor's child. How did that, being a pastor's kid, shape the way you viewed leadership and responsibility early on at a young age?
For sure. All of my, there's the slang word for it, or the initials for it, PK. You're a preacher's kid. You're a PK. Anybody that is a PK knows a PK. They know it means preacher's kid or pastor's kid. You don't really understand it, Tim, when you're going through it. That you are viewed differently. Of course, your parents tell you like, hey, like you're going to get scrutinized a little bit more than the other kids.
Right.
So you just, it's your everyday reality, your everyday existence. It does give you, again, a connection to other preachers' kids because you kind of understand it. I would say, fortunately for me, Tim, that my brothers didn't get this the same way, but my dad stopped being a pastor, still in full-time ministry, but not like at a local church when I was 12. So those teenage years, I didn't have it. Which, it's probably now I was always a good kid, so it probably wouldn't matter too much. I was pretty good with abiding by the rules as a kid. But no, definitely, it teaches you that my parents would have taught me in that scenario that you got to be a leader. You can't follow the crowd. You can't do this or that. Whether my brothers did that or not, I'm not going to say that on this podcast. That's for them on their podcast episodes. But
you
for me,
set the good example, though.
I set the good example for my older brothers. They just didn't choose to follow it. Now, it did give you that idea of like, hey, people are watching you, right? And so that was good from a standpoint, again, of just, gosh, everyday life, especially now. Everybody's always being watched now, Big Brother, right? But ultimately for me, it did teach me that my example mattered and that what I chose to do and how I choose to act would impact and influence others. And I need to be mindful. It wasn't just about me. It was about, setting a good example for others as well.
Are there any specific examples in the church community growing up that taught you discipline, service, or how to be resilient?
Man, definitely in the resilient, all of those things. I mean, there's so much you do learn. And again, the environment I was in, we were independent, fundamental, missionary Baptist, King James only. So we're like a very strict sect of Christianity, of evangelical Christianity. But I learned so many things. It's hard to quantify, this or this or this. But I guess maybe the one thing that would stand out on that resiliency thing is that when you're a leader of anything, but definitely in a church where it's such a personal thing, you're a leader over people in their personal lives, and their spiritual lives, not just their corporate, not just saying like, hey, you need to do better with XYZ at work. It's like, no, you're helping lead people through some of the toughest times in their lives. Is that there's two things that stick out from a resiliency standpoint. One is that leaders can be extremely lonely. It's an isolated thing. And so it's so important for you to have community that strengthens you as a leader. You have to be, iron sharpens iron. You got to get connected with other leaders, because if you just go solo, if you just go isolation, it leads to bad places. The other piece of that, and this is why, again, the reason for not being isolated, and again, for the resiliency piece, is that you're going to face unfair criticism. Not to say that any criticism you get is unfair. Some of it is very, very fair. But, you're going to receive in that type of position, personal attacks, attacks on your family for sometimes unfair reasons or for no good reason, just because maybe you called somebody on something, or maybe you tried to hold somebody accountable to something that they didn't want to be held accountable to, or that they bucked against. And so, the resiliency piece is like, look, if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to impact people, if you're going to serve people, you're going to face some criticism in life. You have to make a decision on am I doing it for the applause of others? Or am I doing it because I believe this is what I'm supposed to do? Because if you're doing it for the applause of others, you'll get broken really fast. But if you got a purpose or a higher calling to do it, then you're going to have some thick skin and a resilient spirit for sure. And I did see my dad with that, and grateful. My mom and my dad, because pastors' wives, that's a totally different ballgame too. My parents were great examples, just great people, lead with servants' hearts. They're in the same church now. My dad's not the pastor anymore, but the church I grew up in, 44 years later, the church my dad started pastoring, my parents go there now and they serve the same people they've served for 40 years. It's and they got just a great testimony. So I'm grateful for my parents and the examples they set for me.
So like any kid, you're getting ready, head off to college. You actually started playing soccer a little bit late in high school, especially as somebody that decides, I want to try and earn a scholarship. Well, you did that, and you're going to go off to study theology. What I guess intrigued you about the team sport and the organization of soccer to pick it up that late in high school and decide I want to play this for the next 4 years?
Tim, I think, man, this is actually probably the better leadership lesson. I started playing soccer because my friends played it. I had been a baseball guy growing up too. Think about it. I was born in '80, so the Braves were just phenomenal in the '90s. So growing up watching the Braves play from the time I was 10 years old. They were just winning the divisions every single year. Greg Maddux, John Spoltz, Tom Glavine, all these guys, Chipper Jones. So I was a baseball guy. But my friends played soccer, and so I'm gonna try out. So I tried out. I made the team. I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it because of the one of the coaches that I had. And he connected with me and impacted me and influenced me. And here he is. He was 9 years older than me. So, he's just a kid himself, really, when it comes down to it. He's like 25 years old, But the influence that he had in my life, it swayed me to be, man, I love this sport. I probably wanted to win his approval a little bit too, And so, Tim, I played soccer every day. from then on. I was like, every single day I went home and played. I almost stopped playing baseball. I still played it, but my heart got to soccer. And so I just played and played and played and played and played and played and played. The college I went to was the college that my coach went to. So I went there and he played soccer there as well. So I went to school there because of that decision. And, I was kind of just following in his footsteps, to be honest with you. So I found a leader that made a difference for me, and I mimicked him a little bit, and again, fell in love with the sport that he was excellent at. I didn't become near as excellent as he was, but I did become good enough to go play, at a small collegiate level and spend 4 years doing that. I'm a coach now. I think that kids sports, even if your kid's not athletic, I'm like, man, get them in a sport because you learn teamwork. You learn, how to pass the ball. It's not always about you scoring. Like all these things that you can learn. And again, I'm partial to soccer. So I'm a soccer coach now. I'm like, get your kids in soccer. You can celebrate the easy victory. The ball bounces off of them. You're like, way to go, buddy.
Right.
So hit them in the back of the head. But anyway, those that desire, that leader really inspired me to like get after that. And then, even in my life now, I coach soccer. And part of that again is because when I was 14, 15 years old, this guy kind of stepped into my life and, just invested in me and created a great example and got something within me fired up to go after it. And I did. And I wanted to, pay that forward, so to speak.
Yeah. And collegiate athletics require incredible time, incredible discipline, and focus and concentration because you're juggling so many things. I mean, especially college athletes now more than ever. How did that for you? How did that mindset, that consistency, hard work, preparation prepare you for your future later on in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, definitely at the collegiate level, it's different than high school. Part of that is like it's just so much more communal. High school, you're still going back to your own houses or whatever. In college, it's like, no, you might not live with the guys in the same building or the same, tight space or whatnot, but you live your lives together at a much higher level. And so you have to figure out, again, teamwork, how to communicate. I was on college teams. The most skilled team I was on by far was the worst team, like just toxic, fighting, all that stuff. And then 2 years later, we didn't win a national championship, but we went to the national tournament with a much less talented team. But because we figured out how to, be an actual team.
Yeah.
So I think, man, the biggest thing in collegiate sports for me, with like my experience, was learning the value of being a teammate. So just because you have phenomenal skill level doesn't mean you're a good teammate or that you're actually helping the team. I had some very toxic people on the first team I was on, which again was much more phenomenally talented individual players. But as a team, when those guys moved off the team, our team succeeded at a higher level, because we were good teammates. And so I think that's the biggest thing is learning, like, you can take your individual skill sets and you figure out where to fit them in for the benefit of the team, not just for the benefit of yourself. You got to get rid of your ego. Like, we see that in all sports. You see teams that are super talented and they're like, why is this team dysfunctional? Why aren't they winning? It's like, well, they hadn't figured out how to coexist for the team, where they're being selfless and focus on the team win versus the personal accolades.
Did your time as a collegiate soccer player influence the way you lead now from both the player's perspective and now as a coach in that perspective?
One of the biggest things I learned, and this wasn't anything intentional at all, it's just something I picked up by, I think, my third year playing. And it was on the field, and my coach is just dogging this one guy out. This guy's name is Michael. Mike is getting dogged out by the coach, and me and Michael both played defense. And so Michael turns to me and he says, Michael, by the way, was just this, he just never missed a day at the gym. You know what I'm saying? He was this huge guy, strongest guy on our team. And he looks at me with like dismay in his eyes, Tim. He's like, they all called me Melton back then. He's like, Melton, can you get him to stop yelling at me? He's like, that doesn't work for me. And it taught me in that moment. I was like, because it worked for me. Like, my coaches could yell at me, and it just honestly, just pissed me off. Right. So it's like, make me mad. And I would have played at a higher level because I was angry. But for him and this big, strong dude, like, looks like a T-ball, he's just jacked. That was zapping him. And so what I learned is that, hey, people get motivated differently. And I honestly didn't know it until like that real life example. And I was like, you can't speak the same language to every player, because what works for this guy may not work for this guy. My coach didn't know that. So again, no offense to him, that's not something that he recognized. In that moment, though, it was born in me. So from a leadership perspective, I realized that you can't speak the same language and expect everybody to understand you the same way. Like, you got to figure out hey, what is it that this person needs to hear? What is it that this person needs to hear? How can I communicate in the language of the receiver and not just talk to everybody the way that I talk? And that was a big leadership lesson for me. So I would say from one of the things that was birthed out of my athletic career, so to speak, was that one moment, and it definitely changed. It didn't change in that moment, but it changed. It gave there was a seed in there of like, hey, you got to do this differently. So I still went on and failed in that, just like my coach did, because it was just natural to do it the way I did it. But it created a seed in me of knowing like, Josh, if you want to impact the person that you're speaking to, it's not just saying what you want to say. It's saying what they need to hear to, to move to the next from A to B. If you want to move from A to B, don't just spurt off in the mouth whatever you want. Figure out, hey, what's the way I need to communicate with Micah to get him to go from A to B. So great lesson that I learned, and again, it was an accidental lesson, but grateful that I learned it for sure.
And learning that too takes time, right? You
Absolutely.
saw that because you were close with your teammates, but having those conversations now with employees, seeing what makes them tick, what makes them go, what makes them drive, and having those conversations that go beneath the surface. Soccer teaches you so many different things, especially how to perform under pressure, right? And how to bounce back from setbacks. How do you carry that resilience into running a business?
Good question. I think the most resilient moment for me in soccer, my last year playing, the very first game, I broke my left collarbone. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? It's my senior year, you know what I'm saying? And that thing snapped too, brother. Like people heard it. It was a bad break. But mentally I was like, I'm coming back from this. Like this is not the way that I'm going out. And so I, did the rehab. Obviously you got to wait for the bone to grow back.
Yeah.
And then 6 weeks later I came back and I played again and I broke it again. Soccer season,
twice
set a record for that. Hopefully will never be broken. I broke my cleft clavicle twice one season. But so then that was a darker moment for me. That was I felt a lot of despair. That's for situational depression, so to speak, because it was just like, just laying there on the ground, Tim, and being like, oh man, I can't believe I just did this again.
You went through honestly, rehab. You went through everything.
I did all the stuff, and of course my parents were like, hey, you don't need to do this. My doctor's like, it's your call. And I did it. So it was just this drastic kind of like just let down, just like emotional, just like wind knocked out of you. Mm-hmm. The pain the first time was much worse than the second. It was honestly the second time it was just emotional. But what it did, it prepared me for the future of being able to relate to people when they go through tough things. Now, I can relate to people that as a 44-year-old that are going through much more difficult things than that, because in that moment that felt so big to me, because my identity was so wrapped up in this thing. I wanted it so bad, it just got taken away from me. So there was the resiliency to get to work back to get to where you could go on the field, but then probably even more so the resiliency that I learned from like being able to get past that and overcome it. Because obviously I figured it out eventually, but it was a dark season for me with trying to figure out, all right, like this identity I've held onto for so long is gone. Like I'm not going, I wasn't good enough to be a professional player. Right. So it's like, what happens next? And so going through that time was probably the most beneficial or impactful time. Because it made me think like, all right, what is it going to define? What's going to define me, who I am as a person, who I am as a leader, who I am as an athlete, just I'm going to show up in this world. And it created probably a good line of questioning that I had to battle through to figure out. And obviously still figured some of that out. Right. But definitely for those years going out, that was my senior year of college, going into like what happens next. That was a great, terrible experience, if that makes sense.
One of the things too, whether it's a team of employees or just a team in general, getting everybody to buy in, understand the team concept instead of individual concept, so important, especially sports teaches that success about the team and putting the individual to the side. How do you continue to instill and install that mindset with your employees, getting them to buy into the culture, right? Getting them to buy into the organization, because you get one bad seed, right? And it can become, you talked about the toxicity of that team in your younger years. Say they're more talented, but they didn't understand the team aspect, unfortunately, and fell short. So how do you continue to get employees to buy in, especially, let's say they haven't worked, because you guys typically do go after part-time employees with your cleaning company?
Yeah. So, man, the biggest thing with all that, Tim, is like, you cannot get people to buy into a culture, to buy into a mission, vision, core values, that is not clear. And honestly, in our industry, a lot of companies are like, oh, it doesn't matter, man. We're just cleaning. It's like how do you get people to like? You're going to have a culture, like you're going to have core values.
Right.
Like either they may or may not be clear, but like you're going to have those things. Either you're going to have them like accidentally, just by how you're showing up, and maybe it's somewhat altering all the time. Who knows? Or because it's very very clear. So one of the best things that happened to us is just like through business turmoil, I got angry and I was like, what's wrong with this play? And I came up with core values. So I would say for Athens Cleaning Company, we have a very clear mission, vision, and core values. And it's not just something that was like, no, we have a poster on the wall or it's written down in our handbook, which is great. Write them down. We do have them on the wall. We do have them on the handbook. It's like, no, we talk about them all the time. And if I'm ever doing training, I'm training new team members at this point. But the other day I did because I was out of town and we were starting some new things in a different location, new location. And I was like, look, I just gave them a them. Look, here's the core values, mission, vision, all the stuff. Like I'm gonna tell you what all of them are and how we came up with them and what they mean, so that they know like it's not like this stuff really matters. So man, first thing I just gotta say, I think the reason that team I mentioned earlier that was toxic didn't succeed is because they were not clearly stated, guys, this is who we are. Like we didn't have a good leader. We had a good guy. Coach was a good guy. Everybody liked Coach. Coach wasn't a good leader who could give us the guys, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
This is what we're about. This is how we're going to show up. And so it just was every player for himself, and it showed. So I think from a cleaning perspective, what I look at is, let's say cleaning from a company perspective, any type of corporation, any type of club, any type, whatever it may be, you got to get super clear on this. Now, as I say that, somebody's listening, they don't have any of this stuff set up. And they're like, well, how do you do that? So at first you get really unclear. You just get, but a little bit clearer than you are, right? So it's like, all right, we'll write something down. Write it in pencil. Don't feel like you got to be committed to it for 30 years. When I wrote them down, like everything is different except for the mission than when I wrote it down originally. But at least it gave me something I could lean into, lean forward, fail forward and come up with like, okay, let's change this one. And so ours has evolved over the years. But man, you can't get people to buy into your mission, vision, core values unless you daggum have them and they mean something. It's not just written down on paper. And then I think what you do is if you could communicate those things clearly enough, and if you really believe them and really mean them, you know what I'm saying? Like, then you're going to show up in your corporation that way. You're going to show up in your company that way. So it should just start getting reflected through everything that you're doing. And then the best thing you could do is talk about it in the hiring process and be looking for it. So I know what I'm looking for when I'm hiring people to be on my full-time team. Now, our individual team members that are out and about, remote cleaning 10 hours a week, like, I'm not preaching to them the core values, mission, vision, like so hard because of like, they're very far removed. But anybody that's coming to a leadership level, like we're talking about all the time. For us, our mission is we go above and beyond to serve people. And Tim, you wouldn't believe how many times we're talking about a situation in our company. And me or one of our other leaders will say, hey, did we go above and beyond to serve that person in that situation? Because it's a part of what we do.
Yeah.
So I think if you get clear on it first, this is what we are. I heard this from a guy named Justin Prince that I love. He talks about the 3 S's of standards. He's like, first thing you got to do is set your standards. So you got to set your core values, right? You got to set what's your culture look like. Second thing is you got to share them. You got to share your standards. All right, I got the core values. I got the mission. I got the vision written down. Let me start sharing it. And as a leader, I hate repeating myself. It's a personal flaw, personal character flaw, right? But as a leader, I heard Andy Stanley say, he's like, once you've said the same thing so many times, you feel like if I say it one more time, Tim, I'm going to just feel nauseous and maybe just, have to excuse myself from getting sick. He's like, once you've said it that many times, you're halfway there. And I was like, oh, gosh. So like, I'm literally living on a prayer all the time, man. I'm always halfway. And so you got to be able to set that standard, then to share that standard, and you got to stick to it. So if you got core values, bring somebody in, you're like, ooh, this person isn't reflective of the core values. You got to stick to that standard. So first is you're going to reshare it. Hey, Tim, this is a core value, and like we're missing it. We're missing a little bit here. So here's what we got to correct. And then if they can't correct it, you got to say, hey, there's a better opportunity for you in a different organization that has got core values that you relate to and that you reflect with. I like to draw the picture of Chick-fil-A and Starbucks, two phenomenally successful companies. They're both at the top of their game in their industry, both with very different core values. And honestly, if you lined up people and put them in front of you and said, I just want you guys, they're not wearing their uniforms. We said, which one works at Starbucks and which one works at Chick-fil-A? You'd be like, that one's Starbucks, that one's Chick-fil-A. You don't see people with piercings and tats all over with Chick-fil-A, but you do at Starbucks. Yeah. The companies have very different cultures and core values, but they're both very, very successful. So I would say their cultures are probably in conflict in some ways. But again, both very successful organizations, and they both seem to hire according to their core values extremely well. So know what your core values are, share them, stick to them, and you'll find that if you live those things out well enough, you will attract people. So for us, people that work as team members for us all the time. We're like, hey, is there another opportunity for me? Can I scale up? Because they're attracted to the core values because they actually happen within the organization. So the more you can live them out, the more you're going to attract people to yourself.
We're talking with Josh Melton, owner of Athens Cleaning Company, 7-figure cleaning company, coach in the industry as well. Let's go back to 2005. We're going to spin it backwards.
Yeah.
You and your wife decided to start a cleaning company. Where did the original idea come from, and what was your original reaction? Because you were working in some different spaces, network marketing, you had insurance agencies, so you had kind of an experience in multiple areas.
Yeah. So, I did want to be a business owner. So network marketing, people hate network marketing. I love it because it birthed within me. I wanted to have time freedom and control I want to be able to control my paycheck and control what I did with my days. So that was birthed within me there. Now, Tim, how dare you suggest that I came up with the idea to start a cleaning company? I would never come up with that idea. But my wife did tell me after we'd graduated from college that I think I want to clean houses. And my answer was legitimately, more power to you. And I don't know why you want to go to college, get a degree,
right,
go clean houses, but it seems like you could have just done that. But that's what she decided to do. She was doing that for a while, and then eventually, I started helping out on the side because we started doing some like post-construction cleaning, and then we got into commercial cleaning, and so I was doing that on the side. And I tell people now, Tim, I'm like, I never wanted to be Josh
the cleaner.
Janitor. Not going to happen, man. Josh the janitor is not happening. And here I am on a Business of Cleaning podcast today. So I never wanted to have anything to do with it. I was not embarrassed by it probably, but I wasn't embarrassed by it. I just didn't want it to be, going back to that identity question from before, I did not want Josh the janitor to be my identity.
Define who you are.
So I was like, I was like, no, I want to do something else. I want to have a sexier business than that. And so I started, I chased a bunch of other stuff. But getting started was my wife, and then eventually we just, started doing a little bit more of this. And eventually I did quit my job at the time to do this full time with her for a while.
We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Your first contract, cleaning contract, came from a gym, believe it or not.
That's right.
What different set of challenges does cleaning a gym present compared to a regular office that I'm currently in right now?
Absolutely, man. That's a really good question. And it's also the answer to why I don't clean gyms anymore. But our first commercial contract was a gym, and we got that gym because we cleaned the house of the guy who's the general manager. So that's how we got the account, which if you residential cleaners are listening to that, all of your residential or all of your homeowners, at least one of those people probably works in an office somewhere. So don't be afraid to hit those guys up. That's how we got the account. The challenges with it were the cleaning itself, Tim, wasn't that bad. It wasn't fun cleaning. It wasn't that bad, but it was the hours. So now at the time I had a full-time job as a telemarketer. I was doing business to business telemarketing during the day. And then I would leave that job and I would go do like post-construction cleaning. And then at 10 o'clock, that was the earliest we could start. So at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., I'd be cleaning that gym 5 nights a week.
Wow.
And my goal, I was just inside of me, everything within me was like, if I can get done at like 1:45, I can hit up that Taco Bell for fourth meal. And man, the devastation of being stuck in there beyond 2 a.m., or if that Taco Bell closed at 1:50 like they would do sometimes, was almost the same as I felt when I broke that clavicle. It was just emotional.
Tragic.
Just so sick and tired. But yeah, the hours were difficult. The scope of cleaning is so different than an office. If you're cleaning an office like you or I are in right now, like nobody's cooking in here, nobody's taking showers in here. Like it's, the gym, people are sweating all over the place, right? It's like some of your coworkers are probably sweating all throughout the day, but it's just a much easier clean, air conditioned. You're not dealing with crazy humidity of showers or steam rooms, those types of things. So the professional office environment for sure at this point for me is my that's what I'm desiring and not looking to hit the fitness centers back up anytime soon.
You've mentioned before the best buildings to clean and work in are banks. What makes them for you the most desirable contract that if we're gonna land new contracts, I would love them all to be right here, banks.
So the thing that I'll say with that is like that's definitely a subjective opinion of mine, right? So it's like, hey, I love cleaning banks. There's some people who are like, I wouldn't want to clean banks because they want to clean a 100,000 square foot warehouse, which is fine, because their revenue would be much higher on that than an individual bank branch. But our business model was built around being able to send one person into an office and they could clean it by themselves in like 2 hours or so. So bank branches are perfect for that. We also try to hire people that their full-time job is that they work in an office environment like you or I are in right now.
Yeah.
And so for them, they don't want to go work in the sweaty gym environment. They don't want to clean a warehouse bathroom. They don't want to clean, a factory where there's grease everywhere. But can they go clean from the professional office environment they're in during the day to this other professional office environment that's got air conditioning and like the people that you interact with are largely going to be nice people because they are in the people business. They are customer service reps, like deal with customers, So for me with that environment with banks, it's like most of the people I'm dealing with are pleasant because they're trained to be because they deal with customers of the bank. So I like that piece. And then the cleaning's easy because it's not, again, they're not making a 7-course meal there. They're not taking a bath there. It's like, hey, it's
Right.
not heavily trafficked most of the time. So the ease of cleaning is definitely, it's a lot easier than the fitness center for sure.
Can you take us back to the moment you first thought, I can actually do this full time? And what was going through your head? What signs or turning points for you made the most sense and gave you the most confidence in this cleaning company where you could support your family and get rid of that full-time job?
Yeah. So picking up the first commercial account for us was with that fitness center. The good thing about it was a decent sized fitness center is that, this was 2006 and the rate for cleaning that was about a little over $2,000 a month. So that wasn't very far from what my take home pay as my job as a business to business telemarketer was fresh out of college. Right. So for me, I was like, okay, like I almost got the same amount that I'm bringing home. So I believed it then. Economically for us, we weren't there yet. And so I still worked the job for a while. But that's what gave me at least the hint of like, maybe I could do this full time. And then later that year, we created more work. And so made it a little easier. So it's kind of crazy. In 2006, that summer, I was trying to talk my wife out of this bed. Hey, you probably just need to get a job. We're growing our business at some point, but she was probably making $1,200 a month through cleaning and like babysitting. Sometimes she would clean and she would babysit at the same time. And then in like December that year, we made, 10 grand and I quit my job and 10 grand total revenue. But I knew it was like, again, I was making like $2,000 a month take home pay at my job. It gave me the belief like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I started something else again because I didn't want to be Josh and Janitor. So I started other economic, or other entrepreneurship kind of things for a long time. But that is what got us out and what gave us that belief was that, once we were making $2,000, $2,500 a month in commercial cleaning revenue, I knew like, okay, we could pick up enough to help me leave my job and go all in.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from taking that leap of faith that still impacts how you run the company today?
Gosh, that's a good one. I think that I don't think it has to be this way all the time. But I definitely think that there's seasons as an entrepreneur where you just got to like elevate your belief or suspend your belief for a second. You just got to kind of go all in. You just got to take a chance. You got to bet on your own ability, bet on your own talent, bet like I can figure this out. You're going to have to take some leaps.
Right.
For me personally, I remember this buddy of mine, we went rock climbing, like real small kind of mountain thing. So not something big deal, but I remember at a point though, he was like he's kind of stuck, he's trying to figure out, go here, go here. He's like, I can't really figure it out. And literally the dude just saw a spot and he jumped on the rock and just grabbed for it. Of course, he's harnessed in, right? So if he doesn't get it, there's a safety net, and he jumped and he's grabbed it. And I just always stood out to me. It's like sometimes when you're building your business, there are some moments where you're gonna be like, gosh, I gotta take a little bit of a leap here. And again, not something risk, again, he wasn't risking life and death to do that. He's gonna, he's got a harness. He's gonna swing down a little bit on the rock. But he went all in on that jump. In front of people, it could have looked foolish. He wouldn't have made it. He could have had a little bit of an injury, swinging down and hitting the rock. But there's going to be times definitely where you just have to say, I got to take a risk. I got to bet on myself, believe in myself that I can figure this out. And I got to go a little bit where, a little bit nervous, a little bit uncomfortable here, put some pressure on myself to just believe I'm going to win. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't, but you still have to maintain that, you can take those calculated risk chances where you're like, I'm all in for this season. And, I think that's what it's going to have to take for you to get to the higher levels of success in the industry for sure.
In 2018, you guys were presented with a little bit of a rocky road. And by a rocky road, I mean, you lost 25% of your revenue. What led to that happening in the business?
Man, I can give you the answer 100%. Something I said earlier, lack of clarity, no vision, no core values, no mission, and really bad leadership. And when you're the owner, and your criticism is really bad leadership, you're just looking at yourself.
Yeah.
And so there was a time where and again, Tim, my wife was out of the business at this point. I'm running it on the side. I'm doing other stuff, because I didn't want to be Josh the janitor. And in that season, I really felt like God spoke to me, and he's like, almost like, come on, dude. And really what he said to me is he's like, just go all in here. This is exactly the way I heard it. Just go all in here. Like, quit trying to like make this something on the side, and you're not putting any of your gifts and your abilities and like the special talents I've given you. You're not putting any of that into this. Put it all here and just see what I'll do with it. And I reluctantly did that. I was like, oh, God, didn't want to do it. But we were getting ready to shift from one manager to another manager. And I was able to see at that time, I was like, if this doesn't go perfectly, I'm going to have to dive in and save the whole thing, because I had the most kind of institutional knowledge of all the things that were with the business. So, oh man, I want to do that. And so, it's like, all right, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to run it. And with the idea that like, just to bridge the gap. And then when I did, I went in and I uncovered all sorts of things that were reflective of my poor leadership and my not watching it, not caring, and not loving people enough. I saw all these flaws and cracks, but I did know that God told me to go all in. And I brought my wife back. It was both of us. We're going to go in and we're going to ride this thing and figure it out. And we lost right after that happened. I started seeing the cracks, and we literally lost 25% of our revenue in like a 6-week time period around Thanksgiving to Christmas. And so going all in, and God saying, go all in, that was like, I went all in, and then 25% of our revenue lost, So I was like, I'm a phenomenal leader, and God has led me great. But, reality of the situation is that is when our core values were born. That is when I looked at our business and I was able to identify, I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. Like I came up with 7 things that really bothered me about it. These things are ticking me off, dude. And I was like, what's the opposite of those things? And I wrote down 7 things, and that was our new core values. And I sent a message. I call it the New Year's 3. I said this message to all of our team, every single person that worked for us. And I was like, hey, I need to ask your forgiveness. There are so many problems with this organization, and that's my fault. So my plea is for your forgiveness, and my promise is that this is not going to happen again. And I told them, here's our core value. Here's the data. Here's where we stand. Here's the data. And we had a lot of our people leave because they wouldn't reflect, some of them hadn't been led well. My fault, but the core values didn't reflect who they were. And so we also lost about 25% of our people.
Wow.
So, but that turned into this time period where that year, so from 2000, so that next year, so we lost 25% at the end of that year. Our growth from a calendar year perspective, that next year was 6%. Our revenue grew 6%. And I was so stinking proud, Tim, because we lost 25%.
Yeah.
So we had phenomenal growth that year, and we're rebuilding and we're bringing people on we started bringing the right people on, because you know why? They were able to see that this was the right place for them to be, because the core values are documented and reflected within the way that things was run. So God took that moment and he just totally blessed it. But it created a rock bottom kind of moment for the business. But that I've heard it said, hey, rock bottom was a really firm foundation, right? So from that firm foundation, we were able to lay the core values, and we were able to lay down like what we've built since then. And at this point, our business has multiplied about 6 times since that time period. So God has blessed it. We've become an organization that as leaders, we can be proud of. For me personally, I stopped caring about being Josh the janitor. I was like, well, no, I might daggum wear a t-shirt says it, brother. So from an industry perspective, we just believed God, and we had faith, and we worked. And there's still trying times, of course there were, but man, we worked our butts off, and God blessed the work. And we worked our butts off because we believed that he was going to do something with it. And he has, man. And it's been such a blessing, not just for us, but we've allowed us to also be a blessing to others through the organization. And honestly built something that, again, we are extremely grateful for, extremely proud of, and don't take the credit for it. Right? We did the work that God asked us to do, and God blessed it.
And for you to come out, persevere on the other side, and actually say, now, this was the best thing that ever could have happened to us. That really says a lot about you as a leader, being able to go all in, come out. But I got to ask you this. That was 2018. I know COVID for you guys was fantastic, but have you ever thought, what if you kind of discovered that and had these issues a little bit further up against maybe with COVID? How do you feel like, have you ever thought about that? Well, man, if boom, we lose 25% and it's right up to COVID and you're losing employees. Have you ever thought, man, how would we have dealt with this if it was right up against COVID, like at the end of 2019, let's say, or beginning of 2020?
It's funny you asked that question, because I've never thought of it until you asked it. I really hadn't. I was like, that's a really good question. I think for sure we would have fallen apart. I think that because of what we had kind of rebuilt and figured out about who we were, our core values reflected how we lived about COVID. 100%. I mean, there was so much going on then. There was so much money that could be made, and there was a lot of money that was made in crappy ways then, selling snake oil and all that. And we just determined we weren't going to do that. And so it was again because of 2018, because of losing 25%, because of the figuring it out. Who are we really? What is our identity as a company? We had enough of a runway to build the right rapport with our clients. And so that during 2020, they believed in us, they trusted us, they counted on us. And so I think it was a huge blessing for us that season. That's a hard thing to say where it's a blessing or COVID, but for our company, it's like, hey, that was we grew a ton during that. But yeah, man, absolutely. No, if we wouldn't have, if 2018 wouldn't happen, 2020 would have been the end for us for sure. But great question. Again, I don't know. I've never thought about that. But that was a really good question to ask.
Were there moments too, you're pouring everything into the business, where you felt overwhelmed? And if so, how did you push through those moments of maybe self-doubt?
There's something within me that doesn't, and my a good buddy of mine, we talked about this one time. It's like, people talk about the will to win. You just got to want to win. You got to have the will to win. And I'm like, he and I were talking one day, and he's like, I don't think that's what we got. He's like, it's not that we have the will to win. It's like, we refuse to lose. And those are different things. They really are, because it's not winning at any cost. It's like, I'm not going to lose. So with my integrity in hand, with my values in hand, like I'm going to figure out a way, like I'm not giving up and I'm not going to quit. And so I think that's the thing that I'd say is like just the perseverance piece, learning how to get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter, so you can stay true to the things that do, like distraction. Mm-hmm. Distraction is just anything that takes you away from traction, anything that takes you away from moving toward the thing that you really, really want. And so I think that refusal to lose, man, I think that's what it is. If you get somebody and it's like, look, man, this guy ain't the best athlete. Rudy, why don't we watch that movie? It's like, right. He wasn't a winner. He just refused to lose. He wasn't going to quit. Right. They're trying to figure out how we make this guy quit. And he's like, I ain't going to quit.
Outworked, out-hustled everybody.
Less talent, less size, less everything. But then again, will to win, maybe. Refuse to lose, he wouldn't lose. Yeah. He wasn't going to quit, man. And so I think that's the thing, is like, if you can just say, I'm not going to quit. Like, I'm not going to give up. I just think that's more important than the will to win. And it could be semantics, but I'm like, no, man, I ain't got to finish first. But I'm going to finish the freaking race.
Right.
There's not going to be a DNF beside Josh Melton.
Yes, right.
And I hope the people that I'm rolling with, the same thing. Hey, man, we're going to finish, dude. We may crawl across the finish line an hour after everybody else finishes, but we're not going to quit. We're not going to lose.
Finding your leadership style and being a leader to your team / company is one of the most important things an individual does. When did you first start to recognize and realize what kind of leader you were and starting to become?
I was telling a guy that works with me the other day, that's a really difficult question, because I think leadership is a constant evolution, and and a micro evolution. It's like, you're just, if you're doing it right, you're going to be changing little by little over time, and sometimes you're going to scale back. Sometimes you're going to fail a little bit. You're going to screw up. Life's not it's not an upward journey like this. It's like, no, you just 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? So there's a lot of regression that goes along with that. What I was telling the guy that works for me the other day is that I'm like, look, man, when I was in my mid to late 30s, I started just to accept who I was a little bit. Now, I'd screwed up so much of life. I'd had so many failures in life. And so, I think one of God's greatest gifts to me was at some point in time being like, golly, man, I'm just a colossal failure in so many areas. And knowing that God still gave me grace. And because God, who loves me, can give me grace, then if he loves me and he can give me grace, then I can give myself grace for those failures as well. And Tim, I don't believe as a leader, man, if you can't give yourself grace, you expect you're going to be able to give others grace?
Right.
And what kind of leader do you want to follow? Somebody who just beats you up all the time? Somebody who nickels and dimes you? Somebody who micromanages you? Somebody who criticizes you all the time? Or somebody who gives you some space, man? Some space to grow, which means some space to fail. Failure is the fertilizer that enhances your growth, right? Mm-hmm. So from a leadership perspective, at some point in time, the thing the best leadership gift that I have is a strong recognition that I'm bad at a lot of things. So I know, like, I got to be humble because I'm bad at so many things. I'm good at some things too. I'm humble enough to know that I'm good at some things, but I'm humble enough to know that I'm bad at some things, which means I got to give some other people some space to succeed in those areas, which means I got to give them some space to fail in those areas. And I'm going to give them grace when they fail because I suck at those things too, because I failed a lot in life. Because when I fail, I don't want judgment. I want grace and mercy. So as a leader, I create a lot of space for people to fail. And again, does that mean nobody ever gets in trouble? Of course not. People have to, we talked about standards earlier. Hey, here's a standard. We're going to stick to it. But can you discipline somebody with love and grace? During the hardest times of our company, there's a Torn Wells song called Truly Known. And there's a line in the song. And it says, it's hard truth and ridiculous grace. And I used to say that all the time to my team. Hey guys, we're going to have ridiculous grace with each other because we're going to fail a lot. But we're also going to tell the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard. So we're going to have hard truth. Hey man, we missed the mark. Here's where we missed the mark. Yeah. We're going to have ridiculous grace. It's like, and that's okay. I believe in you, but this is where we're headed. So tons of grace. So I think at some point I identified for myself as a leader. It's like, I'm good at a couple of things. I'm bad at everything else. And because I'm bad at so much, I'm going to lead with grace and ridiculous grace, hard truth, ridiculous grace, hard truth. So I challenge people a lot. Hey man, we got to be here. But there's not one person in my company that I've raised my voice at, that I've yelled at. I ain't going to do it. Am I perfect? No. Hey, have I ever yelled at anybody in my company? Of course, they just don't work here anymore. So at my current company, so I'm like, no, I'm going to lead with grace because I believe that, I believe I got a relationship with God because of grace. And if I can have a relationship with God because of grace, then I as a leader can have grace and give grace to others.
Leadership isn't something we arrive at. It's something you continue to work on a daily basis. For you, what practices, what habits help you consistently improve as a leader during your journey?
Oh man, I wish I could say I've been the super consistent person the whole time. I would say that one of the things, if we use the word consistency to mean that over my life journey, and especially my journey as an adult, they're frequently found these things in it. I would say that I've listened to a lot of personal development podcasts, books, things like that, going to conferences or events, being around other people. So there's been definitely, the personal development piece that goes with that. That's been consistent. Going to conferences so that you can meet and connect with other people. That's been a big thing. So I think there's those things that we all know, like, hey, motivate yourself, educate yourself, be around some people, find some people that you can teach you to lead or that you can follow. I'm going to give this thing though, man. There's nothing that's elevated me more as a leader and as a person and as someone who lives a life that I consider successful. And again, that's a subjective term, man. But for me, every day, my intent, and I miss some days, but I use technology to my advantage, at least in this one area. I have a consistent habit of I open up my Bible app on my phone or read the verse of the day. And it is a little devotional after that. And then the secret for me is that there's a prayer time little feature after that. And I do that, man. I do it daily. I just take some time. And I'm like, I'm going to be present today. I think the most important thing about a person is what they think about God. It's I think, I'm just going to try to be present with my leader, my relationship with Jesus. I'm going to be present there. I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to read his word. I'm going to let somebody else teach me on it. And I'm going to take intentional time just to listen and pray and be present in that day. And I could legitimately on this YouVersion Bible app on my phone, I got a prayer list. It gives me, and I used to get overwhelmed by the idea of connecting with the creator in these ways. I mean, oh man, you got a prayer list, you got to pray about a million things. I'm gonna be there 5 hours. This Bible app technology piece gives me 3 things a day. If I can click, give me 3 more, it'll give me 3 more. But it just give me, Tim, this presence of being able to say, life is bigger than me. Life ain't all about me. It's not about what people think of me. It's not about how I show up. I mean, those are components of life, but life is truly about, hey, can I impact and influence others for a greater good? And when I take a moment to pray for like 3 other individuals, hey man, this is something they're going through right now. Kimberly's got cancer. Clay's daughter's on drugs. And I'm just like, I'm going to pray about that. I'm taking my eyes off of Josh and all the stress I might feel. And I'm intentionally being like, I'm blessed. I'm going to seek to try to be a blessing. So by far, number 1, best, highest return on investment leadership habit I have is daily time with my creator. And sometimes that is 2 minutes and sometimes it's 20 and sometimes it's an hour. It changes every stinking day.
Right.
But that's what it is. And I can tell you that if you're like, how can you leverage the most leadership? By far. So books, conferences, all those things, absolutely great. 1 million hours of podcasts. Like, yep. Me connecting with my creator, consistent daily basis, by far, number 1 leadership tool.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone still, let's say it's a new commercial cleaning owner, still figuring out what kind of leader that they are, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would offer them?
Get a mentor. Get a mentor you can be honest with. Don't look for somebody who's just their business. You like the way their business looks. Mm-hmm. Like the more that you can get like a holistic view, of like, because there's some people who've built some phenomenal businesses and their personal lives are just absolute shambles. And so, if you want your personal life to be an absolute shambles, then, choose that leader. I'm really not even joking saying that. You're like, no, I'm going to sell out to success. I don't care about family. I don't care about friendships. Okay, if that's the leader you want, find them, get after it. But, you find somebody, you're like, hey, I think I can connect with the way this person shows up in life, and they show up as a leader. So the great thing with technology is that you can see a lot more people. Obviously, you can't see every piece of their life, but you can get feelings on people. People can get a feeling on me of who I am. They can believe I say who I am. This Melton guy's like this or he's not, but they can at least get a taste. So you find a leader, you're like, okay, that's a leader I think worth following for a life. I see their life. What can I learn from them in business? The more if you can get somebody like that and you can get kind of close to them and you can say like, hey, dude, can you just teach me some things? And you won't show up like trying to impress them. Like just be real with them so they can speak into your life. So don't try to make it look like you got it figured out. Man, that's by far the best. We all have blind spots. We all have areas that we don't even know how to grow. We don't know we need to grow. And if you can have somebody that's a little bit further along, or maybe they got something that looks like what you want. If you can find one of those people to give you some feedback and speak into your life, and you'll listen and apply that, that's an invaluable tool that you can have. So that would be the biggest thing. If you're starting out, look around, say, okay, I think that. And by the way, this doesn't mean you're sold out to that person forever. You're not selling your soul to them. You just follow them for, to the next step. It may be a couple months, it may be a couple years, it may be a couple decades. I don't know. You can always pivot. You can always change. But if you can follow somebody, you can have somebody speak into your life as a mentor. It's much easier to get somewhere when you talk to somebody who has the directions versus just trying to figure it out on your own.
One final question, and it's a deep one here. Going to make you think a little bit about this here, Josh. What's the legacy you hope your leadership leaves not only on your team, but your business as well?
So we're talking about the team. Let me tell you my vision statement for a company. So I told you the mission statement. Our vision statement for our company says that we're respected by our clients, we're appreciated by our team members, and we're remembered by our community. So the idea is that, hey, we're going to earn our clients' respect. And we're also not going to work with disrespectful clients. There's a little side piece to that. If they're disrespectful to us, like, your money's no longer good here. But we want to be respected, and we want to have a respectful relationship with our clients. We want our team members to appreciate it. So this means that, in order for my employees to appreciate me and appreciate the leadership of the company, like we've got to make them feel appreciated. So it's reciprocal. So if I can make them feel valuable and worth, which appreciate means, right? Appreciate means I see the worth in you, man. Mm-hmm. And appreciate also means to grow their worth. So I'm like, if I can help that person grow their feelings about themselves and know that I feel that they're valuable, they're going to appreciate me in return. And then remember about a community piece, it's just like, it's kind of the clients, the people that worked with you, and then also maybe your geographical community. But it's like, can you live a life that of impact to where those people will remember you? So like if you cease to exist, they remember you because you made an impact and made a difference. So I think the thing I'd say from a leadership standpoint, overall for me, you're like, what do you want your people to remember about you? And I'm going to say, well, the way I'd answer this is going to be the people closest to me. Okay. Because I'm like, I don't know how many people are going to be at my funeral, but there's a certain amount that I would care, that I would hope that they'd be there because I want to invest in them so heavily. Right. And so for those people, I want them to know, number one, that I appreciated them. And if I could say, what about that guy that we want to remember, or what impact do we want to feel? I want them to know that I lived a passionate life. So if I think about my kids, I'm like, hey, I want my kids to know, like, my dad lived with passion. He wasn't complacent. He wasn't lukewarm. Like, he was passionate and purposeful about his life. Like, he showed up with a desire to make a difference. And I want them to think he loved me. Hey, I know that my dad loved me. I know that my leader loved me. I know that my boss loved me. I want them to feel that, like, that guy loved me, man. Like, bosses think, he loved me. I know he loved me. He believed in me. Challenged me, so I think I want those things. And then this last one, which is, man, this is kind of silly, and I'm probably, done a lot of this in this podcast episode, but I'm like, she made me laugh. And the reason that's important to me is because we put so much daggone pressure on ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. In our lives, we're like so intense. And I'm like, for me, like, laughter is a tool, joking is a tool, and typically I'm like making jokes at my own expense. Like, hey, man, I want to take the pressure off somebody. Absolutely. Just take the pressure off. Make them go, like, they laugh. They just kind of, it's hard to laugh, not exhale. So I want to know that I loved them. I want them to know I was passionate, purposeful, that I believed in them, that I appreciated them. I saw their value and saw them worth. And dadgummit, man, that I just made them laugh and not take life so seriously all the time. That's what I want to leave as my legacy. Again, that last one would say this too. And it's saying all that stuff, man, that purpose and that passion, all that, is that he followed the Lord. Like, because that was the passion and purpose for me. They know I'm about, like, dude was passionate about his creator and feeling like that God could use them to make a difference. And then the way that I would make a difference is those things that I just mentioned.
Josh, we're thankful. We're grateful for you taking time, sharing your knowledge, sharing your story, your journey in the industry. Where can our listeners connect with you online if they have any additional questions or just want to network with you? Where can they do that?
Yeah, easiest places to reach me. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Josh Melton on LinkedIn. I post on Instagram, put reels on there. Where I just do little 1 minute, 2 minute little stories, lessons. My Instagram handle is at Stronger Josh. It's almost a joke because you're looking right now, you can see I'm not very strong right now, but hopefully it gets stronger every single day. So at Stronger Josh. And I also run a community for people who want to build a business that looks like mine called Six Figure Cleaner. So we help people go from 6 figures of revenue. So, if somebody's doing at least 100 grand of revenue, they're a good starting point for us. We want to help you get from 6 figures of revenue to 6 figures of profit in a business that you can take vacations from, not some business where you're doing everything yourself. But I run that. It's called 6 Figure Cleaner. And so you can find me there at sixfigurecleaner.com. And those are the best ways to reach out to me.
Well, thanks again, Josh, and look forward to following and continued following your company and your success, and appreciative of your time.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me on the podcast, man. And I'll plug this thing too. Again, I've learned a lot from your podcast. Haven't listened to every episode, but I've listened to lots of these episodes. You did such a great job as a host. Again, you got an awesome voice, dude. I felt a little insecure today in the voice battle. But this is a great podcast. If you guys aren't subscribed to it, make sure you subscribe.
Thank you so much for the kind words. That will complete this month's edition of the Business of Cleaning podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and your comments as well. From everyone at Janitorial Manager, our guest, Josh Melton, I'm Tim Clagg saying so long until next time.